This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the FTC filing a new case against Microsoft, more layoffs hitting an IGN-owned game studio, a PlayStation developer having a truly based take on frame rates, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 42. I am your host, the man who is actually a mixture of deepfake recording and AI voice generation, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has been nominated to serve as the VP of all video games, Justin, better known as I Am Zaragon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been quite well. It's been a mixed bag of things, I'll say. So, I guess I'll work my way somewhat backwards. So tonight, had to relocate for the podcast because, which I mentioned to you earlier, my internet was out because a cable had been cut. So have to wait for Verizon to come around and get that fixed up, and so we'll see what happens with that. But so I had to relocate, move everything over to my sister's and record here. But going back a bit further, there's a sort of Mexican fusion restaurant that my sister introduced me to. It's called Bubba Burritos, and there was one burrito, because you can sort of like make your own burritos, and my sister told me about something she did, and I mistook what she said, because I thought she said that with her meat she chose both shrimp, garlic parmesan shrimp, and chicken. She only picked the shrimp, and so I got the chicken and the shrimp and with some other stuff, and I thought, wow, this is great. And so I thought about it, and I was wondering, can I do that at home if I get like the right stuff? So granted, I didn't make the garlic parmesan sauce just because I wasn't certain how to make it. So I just pretty much bought whatever I could find at the store. But I tried getting some shrimp, cooked that, mixed the sauce I found in the store, got some chicken, cooked that, put in some brown rice, put in some cheese and sour cream, and it tastes close enough to what I got there, so I'm very pleased with how that turned out there. I might modify a few things here and there, but I think that overall I'm pretty pleased with what happened there. And what my job is going to have a few new projects coming up, a few new sort of publications we're working on, so it's going to be something that my team's going to have to work on now. Granted, we were told that some stuff we might not have to do too much just because it might be republished stuff and recycled things we're working with, but it's going to be something new, which, depending on our work schedule for the day, is going to make things more difficult, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's pretty much a good summary of how things have been going this week.
Cool. Yeah, that burrito sounds good. Definitely. I think what would probably be really good is doing like a jerk chicken and shrimp burrito would probably be really good. I mean, I don't know what all you would put in it, because I'm trying to think of whether or not any sort of beans would go well with that. Because I feel like it's one of those things where it could either be really good or just kind of like really meh.
Right.
So I don't know. I might have to try something like that. I still have a little bit of leftover beans in the fridge, and I pulled out our jerk chicken marinade from the freezer and defrosted that, and we mixed it up with some rotisserie chicken this evening for sandwiches. But I might have to try that. Maybe I'll try that tomorrow. Anyway, as far as my week goes, it's been it's not as busy as the previous week. Still had a lot going on, but it was less. And trying to think if there's anything out of the ordinary. We had our trip to Kansas City on Thursday, which was, most of the day. But I was able to still get the podcast edited and everything and finished at a good time. And then I think after that, I was able to get the rest of the recording done that I needed to get done for the comparison that I put out this past Monday. And I know that there's something else that was unusual. I can't think off the top of my head what it was, but there was something that came up today that was, thankfully, is already resolved. I'm so glad. All right, so as I've mentioned to you before, anyone who's listening may or may not have heard this before. So this house that I'm living in, this was a house that my mom bought when she moved to Missouri in 2019. She passed away in 2021, and the house was inherited by me and my 3 sisters. Now, of course, my sisters didn't want the house. My wife and I did want the house. And so we put our portion of the inheritance as a down payment and got a loan from the bank so that we could buy the house. So this was one of the first houses built in this development, in this whole neighborhood. And as far as we knew, there was nothing about an HOA, a homeowners association thing where you have to pay dues and stuff. There was nothing that we were aware of that my mom had done with that it even existed, especially since she was one of the first houses built in the neighborhood. Similarly, when we bought the house, we were not aware of, we definitely didn't sign anything about homeowners, about being part of an HOA, paying dues, anything like that. But there's this letter that was going around in our neighborhood Facebook group where people were basically saying that this was something that was coming up soon, that people were going to have to start doing the HOA thing. And some people had signed stuff when they initially joined in, or when they bought their house. They had signed paperwork, they had paid dues at the time, that sort of thing, just for something that would be happening in the future. So it came up today that this is something that was going to be implemented soon. And some people had already received the letters. Some people were going to be receiving them probably soon. We had not received anything. We never signed anything. We were pretty concerned about it because we don't want to be part of an HOA. We don't need someone telling us what to do with our property. We're not going to leave it trashy, anything like that. None of that. We're not doing anything with that. But we don't want to pay dues for something that really, the extent of the services they would provide are that the sidewalks would be maintained. And it's there's each street only has a sidewalk on one side of the street. And, it's fine, it works. I still take my daily walks with the dog and, all that's fine. But it's what would we really be paying for? It's I don't want to just give away money to have people tell me what to do with my house. It's fine if they say, hey, can you do us a favor and just for example, take down your Christmas lights that I still need to take down from December. Technically, I haven't taken them down since December of 2022, but and I'm not even talking about the ones in here. I'm talking about the ones outside, but I do want to get those down. I just haven't gotten around to it. So we were kind of worried about it because we didn't think that there was any reason why we should have to be part of this, considering the fact that we never agreed to it, nothing else. I contacted a guy who's basically been our lawyer. He's part of our church, and he helped with stuff related to my mom's estate in the first place, getting that all set up, and some of the stuff following up after she passed away, as well as some additional things that we had requested, and will be helping us to, when I can afford to do it, get a business license so that to officially establish an LLC for all the content I'm producing, as well as setting up a trust for the kids and all that. So anyway, I had contacted him about it, but we hadn't received anything. And he said, when you get it, go ahead and send it to me. I'll take a look at it and see, what the deal is with that. So we were both kind of frustrated and a bit worried about it because we just don't need one more expense. And thankfully, someone posted in the group, which I believe is with the development in the first place, who had originally said, okay, this is going to be going out to people, said that this is only for the second and third phases of the development, which means we're exempt. So we don't have to be a part of it because we were part of phase one. Our house was phase one. And so we took a screenshot of it to save it. We make sure we have that so that if anyone ever tries to say, hey, you're bound by this, we'll say, nope, we're part of phase one. We're not bound by this at all. And yeah, I mean, we'll definitely still have to make sure we have a little more documentation, but we at the very least have the screenshot demonstrating, we have our receipt. Besides the fact that, none of our housing documents have that. They don't have anything signed by us. They can't prove that we ever signed anything because we didn't. So I'm very relieved that we don't have to be part of an HOA because I really, really do not want that. That is like the one thing that I really did not want to be. Like, I like being in a suburb. I like the neighborhood I live in. It's quiet. People are, overall people are like really respectful. They take good care of their houses, all that. And it's like, I understand them wanting to maintain everything, maintain the appearance, all that. Totally get it. But I do not want to pay someone to tell me how to manage my own property. I will take care of it myself. I will do my best to maintain it as well as I can. And, like if they want to tell me to take down my Christmas lights, fine. I don't really care. But the fact of the matter is they can't. They can't force me to do anything that they want me to do. I don't have to pay dues. I don't need another expense. And I'm very thankful for that. So, yeah, that's pretty much my week in a nutshell. I'm sure that there's more stuff that I'm just honestly forgetting about, but that thing was more in my mind because it was such a big thing today that was on my mind. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's I'm glad to hear that you weren't roped into doing that because that yeah, I mean I agree that, making sure people take care of their properties is good, but like being forced to do stuff which as you said, having that expense for something that you might not even really utilize as well, like I think for like maybe in certain instances having it is a good thing, but I feel like in many times an HOA isn't really necessary, and it's really just a burden for most people just because having to pay those monthly expenses when they could literally be doing anything else with that money. So definitely glad you were able to get out of that, and that you do have the screenshots and documentation showing that, hey, we did not sign this. So that's definitely great to hear.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that I got so sick of having landlords because like one of the first places we lived in after we got married was it was a house that we rented, and it was a good price. It was pretty well isolated, so that we didn't we could have our surround sound on. We weren't disturbing anyone. It was great. Apart from the fact that I didn't really like being that far out of town, but the main issue was that our landlord was a neat freak. And at the time, both of us were working. So neither one of us are all that clean to begin with. And on top of that, it's just like we were both tired at the end of a work day. And so we just weren't very good about keeping the place clean. And he was trying to sell that house as well as the other two properties, the 3 rentals together. And so we had to keep it clean more often. And it was harder to maintain it. And of course, that on top of the fact that we're not particularly neat people in general. And then we were also really inexperienced. And so there was some cleaning aspects that we just had never even known were a thing, like wiping off the top of the cabinets. I had no idea before that grease gets up there from cooking. And that happens in any place you live in. Now, I would imagine probably most landlords wouldn't know to look up there. But this guy was a neat freak. And I mean, I'm glad that he helped us learn that. But it still was just like, man, I hated having him as a landlord. And I just hated having landlords in general. It's like, it's one thing, it's good when they're hands off. but when they are very much like in your face and getting on your case all the time, it is so irritating. And it is so freeing if you're able to buy a house. And I mean, I know right now it's really hard to buy a house for most people because of just the insane prices and interest rates and everything else. And, God willing, hopefully something will change in the near future to where we'll actually have some of that stuff's costs start to go down. But at least as of right now, there's no way of knowing one way or the other. But anyway, so yeah, I ranted enough about that. What have you been playing this week?
All right, so I'm just gonna get this one out of the way. So I played some more Helldivers 2, and of course, well, if you've watched podcast previous episodes, just know there won't be any gameplay footage, just because of the fact that I can't, my computer cannot record and play at the same time, so that's why there's no footage here. But played some more of that with friends. As usual, I had to relearn the controls because it's normally every 2 weeks that we play, so
yeah,
I always sort of like forget during that period what happens. I feel like also that I've gotten a little bit worse because I felt like I died much more than I should have, but it was a fun time overall that we had playing that. So I'm content with that, even if they were pretty much carrying me during that period. But the main game that I've been playing is playing some more Kingdom Hearts Final Mix HD. I finally finished the game, which of course I was actually waiting to do after I completed all the secondary objectives for the game, so all the other sort of like achievements. So I got all of the items you can synthesize. So I ultimately got the Ultima weapon, Keyblade. I got all the staffs for Donald, and I got all the shields for Goofy. And I went and took out all of the other secret bosses. So Kurt Zisa, who was initially a problem just because of his third phase, I took care of him. Sephiroth took me a good few tries, but I got through him eventually. The Ice Titan, after I learned you're actually supposed to parry his projectiles, that wasn't a problem. But then Xemnas, well, actually, I mean, I guess slight spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played Kingdom Hearts games, but I guess the unknown man, so since I never played Final Mix before, this is my first time actually facing him, and he wasn't that bad. And granted, by the time I fought him, I already, like I said, had Ultima weapon, and I also had leveled up to 100. But even regardless of that, he still wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I think the main problem I had was he has this one move where he drains your HP, or rather, he'll attack you, and if you don't negate his attack by switching through the commands and hitting release, it'll constantly deal damage to you. So because also it randomly switches up, you have to move the select you have to move your selection right to the right moment in order to select release. And if you miss it and you actually hit the wrong thing, it'll deal damage to you. So that was a pain to deal with. So it took me probably maybe about 5 to 6 times before I was able to do that. So after I finally beat him, I went ahead, finished the game, got the proud achievement, got the no continues used achievement.
Nice.
And so I started over again because I also wanted to go ahead and do the no changing achievement, which is you don't change any of your equipment, and also the speedrun achievement, not both at the same time. So I got through most of it pretty easy because I was playing on beginner mode. And it wasn't until I got to the end of the world and faced Chernobog that I hit a brick wall. Because I don't know what it is, but for some reason it seems like he had more moves, or at least it feels like he had a couple more moves that I did not remember when I was playing it in my first run on proud mode, which is weird considering this is beginner mode. And so I died to him more times than I died to Xemnas right now, which is really insane thinking about a secret boss you lost to more than just a boss near the end of the game of one easy mode, essentially. But granted, part of it was because of the fact that I was still trying to speed run, so I wasn't doing any sort of grinding. And additionally, I also couldn't use a more powerful Keyblade. I had to use the default Keyblade, and I couldn't equip any additional gear. So that might be a good reason why. But eventually, I was able to beat him. And so I am now at the end of the game, right before you face Ansem. And I feel like that's also going to take me a bit of a while because, again, I'm not leveled up, and I, still have just basic Kingdom Key. So it might take me a while, but I've pretty much gone through everything there. And after that, I'll probably take a short break before I jump into Rechain of Memories. But
nice.
But I will say, though, that after completing the game again, I really think this game is great. And I didn't play the first Kingdom Hearts game when it came out. I've only played this game about 5 years ago. So that was my first time ever playing this game. But I feel like this game really does a whole lot that the sequels don't necessarily do, because there's a good amount of charm in this game. Especially since I feel like the Disney aspects really play a bigger part of the story than the later ones do. And I really sort of appreciate the game for that. But yeah, that's everything.
All right. So, are there any additional cutscenes beyond like the introductory one when you're fighting Xemnas?
No other cutscenes that I can think of.
I guess let me back up.
Oh.
The last time you played, did you play the final mix or just the original?
Last time I played was just the original.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just playing the original PS2 version.
Gotcha.
Before I played the final mix on Steam.
Okay. Yeah, because like at first, when I saw the footage that you had put in, I was like, I don't remember this fight, and it's because I never played the final mix.
Yeah. Oh, and also that's actually one more thing I actually want to say is that, funny enough, the secret movie for Kingdom Hearts, this is my actually first time seeing it in the original format that it was in, because a long time ago I had seen the secret movie for Kingdom Hearts, but it was only in certain like AMV videos where it's like chopped up and you put in music like Linkin Park or something like that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'd seen, so like that's the only way I'd seen it originally, like back in ye old 2010s of YouTube. This was the first time I ever saw it in like its original format. So that was definitely that was definitely a good experience for me.
I actually did a couple of music videos like that with Linkin Park songs. Actually, no, one of them was a Linkin Park song, and one of them was gosh, what's the name of the band? It's a Christian band. The name of Anne Berlin. So the song, I can't remember the name of the song, but something that mentions violins. That's all I remember off the top of my head. I have the music. I have the song somewhere on my computer. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but they were both with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. And there's one point in the video, and I don't know how this worked out just perfectly, but there's a line from the Anne Berlin in that Anne Berlin song where it says, "Never know what temporal days may bring. Laugh, love, live free, and sing." And the words "may bring," Vincent Valentine perfectly. The lip sync matched up on that. It's like, I don't know how I managed to pull that off. But yeah, I mean, this was something that I did, would have been early 2000s. Probably on Windows Movie Maker, on an old, I want to say, I guess it had, well, maybe it was XP. It might have actually been Windows 98. That I did it on. I can't remember if my parents ever, because I know it was on my parents' computer. I don't remember if they ever had XP on their old computers. So anyway, but yeah, I don't know that there's any way I could ever track down those videos. They were pretty good though. The Linkin Park song I did was oh gosh, what's the name? Am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but you can't help the fact that everyone could see these scars. Uh,
Um,
gosh, I can't remember the name of the song. It's like I've listened to it a million times. It's from Meteora, which is the last album of theirs I really listened to because that was before they started cussing in their music, and then I stopped listening to them. I'm just gonna find it real quick. So, but yeah, that was something I did back in the day, a little bit. I think that was my first the first time I really did any sort of like video editing was back then. I was definitely very much just kind of fumbling my way around, figuring that out. Oh, dang it, it's not even on here. Shoot, I think I lost my disc. Or at least I don't know where it is. Darn it, because I only have Hybrid Theory and Reanimation on here. For some reason, they're not Meteora, but anyway. I'm sure it will come back to me what the name of the song is. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Gosh, that is gonna bug me. I'm gonna look it up. Okay, let's see here. Linkin Park. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored. Faint. That's the name of it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah. 20. It already reached its 20-year anniversary.
wow.
That actually, yeah, I think that was 2003. I think that's when it came out. The original album. So, because I know I was still in Sacramento when it came out. So it was either 2002 or 2003. Oh man, that's a great album. I need to find my CD and rip it. That's so good. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, the stuff I've been playing, since we are a video game podcast. So not surprisingly, as I thought would be the case, on my way to Kansas City, I finished up Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance and got my 200% completion. I don't know if there's anything beyond that. I don't know if it had the 201.6 like Symphony of the Night did. I have to look and see if there was anything else, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't. So yeah, I completed it. I absolutely loved it. And immediately after, I went ahead and started Aria of Sorrow, which I also completed. I ended up completing that one on Sunday because Sunday was my day off. So after I got home from church, I basically spent like the next, at least after I gave the kids their lunch and apart from taking time to make dinner, I basically just spent the rest of the afternoon and evening playing Aria of Sorrow and playing through and finishing that. And I also loved that one. In the end, I think I like Harmony of Dissonance better. But honestly, it's so close because they're both such incredible games. The one thing I will say with Aria of Sorrow, though, is like when I went back to record some footage today, and I'm not sure if the reason it says that I'm only at 99.1% is because I didn't actually complete the map, or if it's just because of the fact that my save went back to before I beat the final boss. But yeah, I need to double check and see if there's anything I missed, because I would like to make sure that I have 100% completion on that. But yeah, it was a fantastic game. It definitely was more challenging than Harmony of Dissonance, without question. But I really enjoyed it. I liked the differences in what they did with just the overall battle system and stuff. I mean, like Harmony of Dissonance was very much like a GBA version of Symphony of the Night, with albeit much less bloated. Even though I still love Symphony of the Night and still my favorite. But yeah, Aria of Sorrow was very different, but was still very, very good. I was able to get, I can't remember the name of the sword, but it's like one that's hidden in the underground area that you have to run through waterfall to get to and stuff. And it's like this massive sword that has great range, boosts your stats up a bunch. And I mean, I couldn't get it until right near the end of the game, but ended up being really, really helpful. I still used the rewind feature a little bit here and there, but it definitely was nowhere near as much as it was with Circle of the Moon. It was basically just like, okay, here and there, especially like when I'm trying to figure out how to properly dodge a boss's attacks, that sort of thing. It definitely came in handy. Like I think the one I struggled with the most was Death. And it was because of his scythe when he throws it and it like starts at the top of the room and and then like loops around and goes to the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And like it took me so many tries to get through that because I was just not able to figure out how am I supposed to avoid this. And I'm talking to my friend who's a huge Castlevania fan. He and I have talked about these games for a long time. He's the one that said Aria of Sorrow is his favorite. And he said he was pretty sure that you could just double jump over it. And like initially I'm thinking, okay, I've tried double jumping and I can't get enough height. But then I thought about it a little bit more and I realized, maybe I just need to jump earlier than I would think I need to in order to avoid it. And sure enough, that was the ticket. So then I was finally able to beat Death and move on. And then of course, just continued through the rest of it. I don't think there were really any other bosses I struggled with that much. I mean, not that I wouldn't have died to them, because I definitely would have, had I not used the rewind feature. Technically, I did die to them a bunch. It's just I used the rewind feature when I needed to. But the only bad thing about using the rewind thing on those games is that when I jumped into the game that I played the bulk of my time, I was being a little too careless for a while and ended up dying a bit more. But I'll get to that one in a little while. That's going to be the last game I talk about. So, I did, as I mentioned, play some more of Ni no Kuni. This time playing it on the Steam Deck so that I could get the footage for that, or the comparison that I put out this past Monday. And, of course, it performs significantly better. I don't know if I would necessarily say it looks better, because the reality is that they look very close to the same, except that the Steam version is the remaster and the Switch version is just the port of the PS3 version. And so it's like colors are a little more muted on the Switch, but I don't feel like it's in a bad way. In fact, I actually kind of like the way the Switch version looks a little bit better, because it just feels like the shadows work a little bit better and the coloring just kind of works a little better. But it does run at triple the frame rate, basically a locked 90 frames per second versus the 30 on the Switch. However, there is one very annoying thing, and I thought initially that maybe this was just a Steam Deck issue, but it appears, well, it's at the very least a Steam Deck issue. I think it's a Windows issue in general, though. And it's that there's some issues with how the buttons display in the game. And as a result, like you have to press the left button or L1 on the Steam Deck, or similarly on the PlayStation controller, in order to switch characters in battle. But at least on the Steam Deck, when you press L1, it like blurr, and it doesn't firmly stop like it's supposed to. And it's just like this weird thing. If you watch the video, you may have noticed it, but it's very annoying. And I looked into it because initially I wasn't finding anything, but then I looked into it some more. I found out that this is actually a common issue, and it just seems to be a problem with the Windows version of this game, which is really frustrating. I don't understand why it is that this is a problem at all, because I haven't seen this in any other game. At first I thought, okay, maybe it's a Steam Deck issue. Maybe I just need to restart. Tried that, didn't fix the problem. Tried various things, nothing fixed the problem. Checked other games, none of the other games have the problem. So that is a bit annoying to me. Um, I'm not entirely decided on how I feel about the combat of this game, because it's got kind of like a partially turn-based combat system. Um, I mean, I do feel I definitely want to give the game a real chance because I've heard great things about it, and even if one of the people who recommended the game has since lost his mind, everyone else I still think that he has good taste in games. I just think he's lost his mind in other areas, but um, plenty of other people have said good things about this game, and I trust what they say. So, I'm sure this is a great game, and I definitely want to give it a fair chance, and I'm planning to play it at some point. I just don't know when. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm almost half tempted to play it on Switch because of the fact that the weird thing with the button is just very annoying to me. But I probably will just deal with it and whatever. But yeah, so of course, with having finished Aria of Sorrow, I was initially considering hopping into Castlevania Lords of Shadow. So, because I've had that one for a while on the Steam Deck, I know it performs well. You can get a pretty good 60 frames per second on it. I think that one might actually be 90. I can't remember. I'm mixing some up in my brain. I think that one I think does run at 90 without any problems. There's another game which I'll talk about in a little bit that doesn't do 90, at least not at the settings I was doing. But yeah, so Lords of Shadow, initially I was really interested in trying it out, thinking, okay, it's basically just a 3D Castlevania game. And I had played a little bit of it when I first got my Steam Deck, the original Steam Deck, but hadn't made a whole lot of progress. Didn't even get through Chapter 1. And of course, at the time, I was just testing out a bunch of different games, so I wasn't really committed to playing it. But I decided to give it another try, and I played until I completed Chapter 1. And I like it, but it's not the kind of game I was looking for. Because I was thinking it was going to be more of a like a Igavania type of Castlevania game. And it's really not. It's basically a God of War Castlevania game. So it's like classic God of War, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not what I was wanting to play. And so I stopped after I finished Chapter 1. I'll go back to it eventually when I'm in the mood for something like that, but that wasn't really the type of game I was looking for. So, but I mean, I have both Lords of Shadow and Lords of Shadow 2, so whenever I'm in the mood to play that type of game, then I definitely will. It's just I was more in the mood for another Metroidvania. So, I decided to start Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And, of course, that's the one that you bought for me for Christmas last year. And I have been enjoying it. I am, I want to say, 17% through the map, maybe 25%. Yeah, actually look real quick, see where I'm at with that. Let's see, just under 27%. So it of course it performs excellently on the Steam Deck. Gets basically a locked 90 frames per second with all the settings maxed out. Played it a little bit on my desktop as well, and it gets 240 frames per second most of the time on there. And yeah, I'm really digging it. It definitely was one where, like I said, though, because I had gotten so used to the rewind feature, there were a couple times where I just wasn't paying enough attention to my health, and then ended up dying. It was like, oh, oops. So, yeah, I dig it though. The one thing I will say is when I first started off, initially they let you have by default some costume items from Shantae, since WayForward is involved in the development of this game, or at least published it, whichever it was. And like I tried them on and I'm just like, oh man, this is so immersion breaking. I can't put on the Shantae outfit. It's just like it's completely taking me out of the game because like I've only played one Shantae game and I really liked it, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit this game, and it's like even though it gave me boosted stats, I was just like, nah. I'm just gonna use the other items they give me, and then I'll just get better gear as I go along. So that's what I've been doing. But yeah, I really dig it. The only thing that I don't like so far, which I know will change in the future, is right now I don't have a double jump or anything. So it's kind of annoying not being able to double jump. It actually kind of threw me off too, because then when I went back to record for both Harmony of Dissonance and Aria of Sorrow, I forgot about the fact that I had double jump in those games. And so like I was just trying to do things with a single jump. I'm like, man, why am I not making any Oh, it's right. Oh yeah, I have double jump. I can use double jump. But yeah, I do really like it so far. I'm not sure how much I'll be interested in doing like the additional modes that play more like old school Castlevania games, at least from my understanding. Or is that just for the NES style ones for like Curse of the Moon, or is it also for those additional DLC ones?
Well, yes and no. Two of the DLCs play as the NES ones. Like the first, I can't remember which one it's called. Like Classic Mode 1 plays as the original Castlevania 1, and then Classic Mode 2, also known as Dominic's Curse, plays as Castlevania 2, the NES version. However, I think it's the Zangetsu mode is sort of more akin to what you expect from a Belmont mode from Symphony of the Night or Aria of Sorrows. So it's more of like you're playing through the regular game you're playing as right now, but you already have like a fixed set of weapons you have, so you don't have to worry about like the blocky mechanics or of like how of the NES games, but you're limited to like what skills you have. So it's sort of like you're playing as a Belmont, so you have to play with only these weapons. So like that's the one mode there. I can't remember what the other modes were. I know there's a boss rush one, but like there are so many modes and like more content that was put out. I can't remember everything that what I'm missing or if there's anything else I'm missing. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to get kind of like the recommendations on which pieces of content are worth getting. I mean, I'm not getting any of them right now because I'm only a quarter of the way through the game, and that's even just assuming that there isn't like a second castle or anything, which I would guess there probably is. But even if there's not, like I don't need there to be a second one. I was perfectly fine with like Aria of Sorrow. I think I finished that in like 8 or 9 hours altogether for that. So, yeah, but I've been enjoying myself. It's a fun game, and of course the fact that it runs so well on both Steam Deck and PC is great. I played it almost exclusively on the Steam Deck, but I did play a little bit on PC yesterday just because I wanted to test it out. But yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, and I don't have any gameplay recorded for it, is I did briefly try out Dracula X. And I stopped very quickly because it was not the kind of game I wanted to play at all. I don't remember if the other Castlevania games are that clunky, like the older ones, but that one is so clunky. And not like, Circle of the Moon felt clunky initially. More like, no, this is not the kind of game I want to play at all. So I very quickly abandoned that, and I took my friend's advice when he told me that the game sucked. So I'm not going back to that one, and I'm perfectly happy with having played through 3 out of 4 of the games in that collection. Now, if of course they had included Symphony of the Night on there, I would have played Symphony of the Night again, without question, because of course it's an excellent game, and I mean, now that I've played through 3 other Castlevania games, I feel a little more like I'd be justified going back to the classic. if I had the option. However, of course, since I don't have the option, if anything, unless they release it in some other way, probably if I wanted to play Symphony of the Night again, I would either stick to the PS1 emulation that I have already on the Steam Deck, or I would maybe track down the Sega Saturn emulation and try that out. But more likely, I just do the PS1 because I know that it's good, and because I own that. Like I own the game. I bought it on as a PlayStation Classic, and played it on the Vita originally. So of course, playing it at the higher frame rate and everything else would be fantastic on the Steam Deck. I did play a couple other games though. One game was basically inspired by some moron as part of the news media saying that basically you're like a World War II German soldier if you like this. And so I played a little bit of Shadow of War because apparently Lord of the Rings is associated with a World War II German soldier. And it's basically that like I played maybe about 8 hours of this game when I originally started playing it, which was just on PC. I tested it briefly on Steam Deck after I got my Steam Deck originally, but hadn't really played it. It performs well, with pretty much the default settings, which is mostly low. I was getting over 60 frames per second. When I raised some of the settings up, I could still pretty much maintain 60. If I was really going to dive into this one, I would probably have to play with the settings a bit to get at least a solid 60, if not better. See if I could find a good balance between visuals and performance that would fully satisfy me. But man, I did not remember the controls of this at all, and so it's one of those where I feel like either I would have to completely start over to refamiliarize myself, or I would have to just go in and kind of mess around and stuff a bit, because I'm just so unfamiliar with it. And especially okay, running with A, I know that this is very heavily based off of the Arkham combat system, and that's why you're running with A. But yeah, it was throwing me off, and wasn't doing that hot. I mean, I did okay. I only ended up dying once, and it was really just because I was being stupid and fighting a Karagor, or Karagor, however you pronounce it, without having something to actually kill them with. I mean, trying to kill them with a sword doesn't really work very well. But yeah, I was not really doing well on it. So anyway, yeah, I just was playing that because I wanted to spite this stupid person. But anyway, that is definitely something I want to go back to eventually, because I really enjoyed Shadow of Mordor, and what I played of Shadow of War was really good. I just never got very far in it. So, but then the last thing I played was I started up recording. Well, actually, I did all the recording for Ni no Kuni 2, and I basically started playing that so I could record it for the next comparison I'm doing. And unlike the Switch versus Steam Deck for the first game, this one there's definitely more of a visual difference between the two. I mean, it's not as dramatic as it was for Dragon Quest XI, but it's still enough to where it's fairly noticeable. However, I think that the frame rate might be uncapped on this one. I mean, Ni no Kuni 1 was definitely 30 frames per second, which I didn't quite realize until I actually watched them side by side. But I felt like there were times where the frame rate was kind of going all over the place on the Switch version. And I may be wrong on that. I'd have to look it up. But and then playing on Steam Deck, I could get 90 frames a decent amount of the time. but I didn't play around with the settings enough to try and get it to be a consistent 90, so I ended up just capping it at 60, and it maintained 60 easily. So, but in terms of how this game plays, it is fun. I love the combat because this one is it's just an action combat system. And it was a refreshing change because at least what little I played of the first game, I definitely was not a huge fan of how the combat worked. I know I can get used to it, and I definitely will whenever I decide to play it. I'll play the first game first, even though I don't have to, technically. But I want to, because I've wanted to play the game for years. But the second one, it's all action-based combat. Unlike the first game, instead of you having 40 minutes of introductory cutscenes and walking around, you get into the action in like 5 minutes. And you get to start fighting stuff. And I just really like the combat. It felt great. I wish that it had like more of a parry kind of thing for the fights. Because as far as I can tell, it doesn't, at least not early on. Maybe that changes later as you play, but I really like what I played. And also, of course, the fact that it was considerably shorter to get through the introductory section. I mean, I got through the first chapter. It took me less than an hour to get through everything. Although I stopped the recording like just before the end of chapter 1 because I didn't realize how close I was to the end. And so it's like I stopped the recording, ended at the same point for both of them. And then I later went to the Steam version just because I was curious, okay, how much farther do I have? What's going to happen after this? Obviously, there's a cutscene coming up. Is this going to be the end of the chapter? Is there going to be more to it? And yeah, it was just one cutscene and then the end of the chapter, and that was it. It's like, I probably should have just recorded through the end of this, but now I'm not going back because I overwrote my save, and it's like, it's not really worth it. So anyway, but yeah, I really like the combat in that. I think it feels really good, and it actually motivates me more to get into the first Ni no Kuni so that I can play the second one as well. Even though I'm pretty sure that at least the first one is a long game. I'd have to double check. I might be thinking of a different game, but I want to say that doing all the content in the first game is like 100 hours. So not something that I'm necessarily in a rush to do from that standpoint, but it does at least like look as though it will be something that I will enjoy playing, both games, and obviously it'll give me plenty of content, to play when I'm ready. Might even be the next thing I play after I finish up Bloodstained. Unless I decide I need another Metroidvania, in which case I might just pull out like Axiom Verge 2 or something, one of the other Metroidvanias that I haven't finished yet. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I got.
Nice. And you did also answer something I was going to address, because when you mentioned you weren't enjoying Ni no Kuni 1's gameplay, I was going to mention saying that, well, with Ni no Kuni 2, they changed the gameplay to a more action-based, and you're like, oh, never mind. You already started playing that, and so I'm glad that you are finding that one more enjoyable, as you're liking. Yeah. I did want to say that I'm definitely glad you got through Ario as well as Harmony of Distance, and you enjoyed that. And I guess I'm very confused as to why Konami never put Symphony of the Night on PC. I feel
it's like a PlayStation thing. PlayStation's keeping them from doing it, without question.
It's so weird because I'm pretty certain that it's also available on Xbox, at least through Xbox 360, which makes it just so odd that they never went ahead and ported it. Like, I feel like that's I don't know. It's just it's frustrating, I guess, essentially.
Yeah.
But it does sort of make you wonder, though, would they eventually port the DS games? Because there was Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia, which I've played 2 of those, and those were good. And I feel like, sure, they might have to adjust some things because some of the DS stuff needed the stylus, but I feel like maybe they could get it to work without having to input those controls. But if they could, I think that would be great if they put those as a collection for people to play. I think that would be good to do.
Right.
But yeah, definitely glad that you completed and enjoyed those games there for the Game Boy ones, though. For Bloodstained, I definitely feel like you could get by without buying any of the content. Like, as far as I know, the only payable content was maybe like a couple of cosmetic outfits, but then the Iga's backpack DLC content, that one I would definitely say if you had to buy it, only buy that one on sale, because that one essentially is just a boss fight where you fight against Iga, and originally it was something that was put in for the backers from the Kickstarter project,
right?
And then because of the fact that it was something special for them, that's the only reason why he said, well, because it was something that was originally for the backers, I'm only charging this because it was something for them. So to make sure people also could get to play it as well, I'm gonna sell it. So that's the only reason why he did that there. But I would still just say, if you wanted to have that boss fight, only get that on sale, because it is kind of pricey just for like one boss fight. And then I think you also get like a weapon as well, like a sword whip or something like that. But then the only other paid DLC is the Dominic's Curse, which again is just sort of like it's sort of like another classic NES version mode. So you could probably skip that one as well. But other than that, though, there's not really any sort of like content you would have to buy, or like I feel like you would be inclined to buy. So I think the pretty much base experience, because a lot of the DLC was free from my understanding, from what I remember, so it's already right there in the game for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely buy the soundtrack, because
I really
the
soundtrack.
The music is fantastic.
Yes,
I mean, it's been fantastic for all those games that I played so far. Even the little bit of music that I listened to for Dracula X is excellent, but it's just that the game is not what I want to play. So, but yeah, like I thought about it, but it's just like money's tight right now, and it's not on sale, so I just don't have a good reason to buy it. So I'll hold off. It's not going to hurt anything. If I might like just get a song off of YouTube or something for the podcast to add, as background music, because like I really like the music. It's really, really good. And I've enjoyed what I've heard from all of these games, and Symphony of the Night is no exception. Or not Symphony of the Night. Ritual of the Night is no exception. So, but with Ni no Kuni 1, like I know that I'll get used to the battle system, and like I'll end up enjoying it. It's just right now, honestly, the big thing was really just the fact that I was having those issues with it on Steam Deck, and I'll have to try doing it on my PC as well and see if there's any difference in mostly just making sure that one button works. So that's the only button I was having issues with, and it's like, don't have that problem in any other game. It's literally just this one game. And from looking it up, like there's a whole Reddit thread on this, a bunch of people with that same issue. Or, well, at least in terms of how it displays, because what it displays is like, it just displays like a weird string of code that says, I mean, like basically indicating that there's no icon for that button, and for that one and several other buttons in some spots. And it's just like, instead of having the glyph for the button, it just has something else entirely. And there might be a way to fix it. It's just I haven't been able to find anything yet. So if I find something, I'll definitely go through and try to fix it, because that's super annoying in combat. And I don't really know how to solve it, and I don't really want to play it on Switch all that much because of the difference in frame rate. Like, if it was... I mean, if both of them were the same, then I would play it on Switch. But with it being 30 versus 90, it's like, that's a massive difference. And while it's not absolutely essential to have that game in 90, it's still just, is nicer. So, plus, of course, Steam also has the achievements and everything. And if I ever if it's something that I end up enjoying enough to where I want to go for all the achievements, like I'd rather already have that done from that standpoint, and then I can just clean up whatever I need to clean up instead of it being where I have to start the game all over again. Just do that. So, but yeah, we'll see on that. I will say with Bloodstained, let's hear what I can't remember the name of the guy that you fight, but he's the guy he's like the samurai guy with like ninja or whatever with the sword, probably. But anyway, I mean, he's one of the early bosses you face, but he took me quite a few tries. Like the first time, I actually got pretty far into the fight without dying, and then after that, I just died to him so many times, and eventually I ended up switching over to boots for my attacks because I actually liked the boots when I used them early on in the game, but I just hadn't gotten a decent pair that was strong enough, so then I eventually ended up getting a pair that had knives attached to the bottom, so they were you could do slide kicks and stuff like that, and some other combos that I kind of figured out. But yeah, eventually I got past that, and now let's see, where am I? I just got past a little bit past after you get the thing that lets you move objects, move big heavy objects, and then you take the chariot or the carriage thing across the level and stuff, and I'm a little past that. I can't remember exactly where I left off, but I'm in some underground area probably. Or no, I'm on a castle tower that kind of loops around a bit. That's where I was.
Okay. Huh, okay.
Yeah. I feel like there's something else I was going to mention, but that's probably it. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Any other thoughts on any of those before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right. So the FTC has filed a new lawsuit against Microsoft for degrading Game Pass. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the original story here. If I can find which tab I have here. Okay, so this is from The Verge. So the FTC has blasted Microsoft's Xbox Game Pass price increases in a filing to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Microsoft revealed last week it's increasing PC Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate prices and planning to launch a new Game Pass standard tier soon without day one access to first-party Xbox games. FTC calls it a degraded product because the base tier is going to be more expensive. Well, actually, people won't be able to sign up for the original Game Pass for console tier, which was $10.99, included day one new games. But then they're replacing that with the Game Pass standard, which will be more expensive and will not include day one games, but it will include online multiplayer, which previously was a $10 a month separate purchase. So, basically it's just, okay, FTC isn't happy about this. Microsoft did respond to it, and they said that this is not a degradation in service because now they are actually, technically, it's cheaper because of the fact that even though the price went up, because of the fact that they're not requiring people to purchase the online services separately, it ultimately ends up being cheaper. It's just that it no longer includes the day one games, and the only way to get the day one games is to get the Game Pass Ultimate tier, which is going up to $20 a month. So it is a big increase in price if you want the day one games, but you no longer have to pay a separate fee for online. So there's that. Your thoughts?
I'm a bit of a mixed bag here. Partially because I'm really kind of tired of seeing the FTC being brought up into like dealing with Microsoft yet again. But on the other hand, though, I kind of understand what they're saying here. Like, I think the fact that if you want that, you had this tier already set up, and the fact that it's being cut out, and you have to pay more, even if you're, say not getting Ultimate and you're just getting the $14.99 a month version, you're still having to pay more money. Sure, it is cheaper because you don't have to pay the extra fee for online multiplayer, but you're still, at the end of the day, paying more than you were paying before previously per month. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of, I'm not really a fan of that. And I mean, granted, it is something that Microsoft's not the only one doing, because like Netflix also just recently announced that they are cutting out the basic tier for their services, and so like people who previously were on that subscription will have to pay more to get the new standard, or not pay more, just they're upping the price. Oh no, they were cutting it out. It's now people paying that would have to pay the new standard price tier. So Microsoft isn't the only one doing it, but at the same time, I don't like this either. For people who have to pay, more for this. Now, one thing I also say is that I did see some people say that this is exactly what the FTC was talking about, because the fact that they bought Activision and they said that Microsoft's going to jack up the prices after they buy up Activision for Game Pass. And like people were saying, yeah, this is exactly what the FTC was talking about. And I mean, realistically, whether it was now or later, Microsoft was always going to raise the price of Game Pass. That's just Absolutely. Like a fact, because that's what they did. I mean, they raised the price before for Game Pass, so it's not out of, it wasn't out of the cards that they were going to do it again and raise the price. That being said, though, the timing of Microsoft doing this does not look good, though, because of the fact that, they bought Activision. They said, hey, we're going to have Call of Duty on Game Pass, and then they raised the price for Game Pass. So while it was probably not intentional, the timing of them doing this did not put it in a good light for them. So yeah, they really have to work out that aspect of things. But still, overall, I'm tired of the FCC trying to continue putting our taxpayers' money to work, chasing Microsoft. But at the same time, I can't completely fault them in this case, just because of the fact that people are losing a tier that they had before and will have to pay more, especially if they're going to pay for Ultimate. They have to pay, essentially an extra $10. So on that aspect, I'm not complaining too much there. I don't find too much fault, but yeah, that's pretty much where I stand.
Yeah, I'm very mixed on this, much as you are. Of course, on the one hand, people who already have the Game Pass for console that's $11 a month, they're not losing that as long as they don't cancel it. As long as they don't cancel it, they still can do that base tier that's disappearing just for new customers. So at least there's that. That is a good thing. However, I definitely also see the point on both sides, because yes, I agree with the FTC that technically they are downgrading the service because they're taking away day one games. However, they are adding the online, which basically making it so that it ends up being ultimately cheaper for the consumer, which is true. I mean, even though really no one should ever have to pay for online, but the reality is if they were going to go after them for that, they'd have to go after Microsoft or go after Sony and Nintendo too, because they both charge for online. I mean, it's like console manufacturers, they're all charging for online, so you can't really go after them for that. Even though they shouldn't charge for online. But at the same time, I mean, it's just it's so hard to definitively say that, oh, this is like a great thing or a bad thing, because I don't think it's either one. Like, it's not good. It never should be. But it's also, this was inevitable. I mean, it was obvious that the price was going to go up. And I think during the court case, I don't even think at the time they even said that that Call of Duty was definitively coming to Game Pass. They said that they could put it in Game Pass, but I don't think they said that it definitively was. Then it was only fairly recently that we got confirmation that it was in fact going to Game Pass. And yes, of course, that it going to Game Pass is probably a big part of why they're charging more for it, why they're also removing it from the lower tier, or, you know, removing that in day one games. But these price hikes were inevitable. Prices are going up all across the board. It's not just because Microsoft bought Activision. And I know this might sound like I'm like white knighting for Microsoft. No, I'm just trying to look at this as a reasonable person, recognizing the realities across the board. Like, when Sony does it, I feel pretty much the same way. Like, it's going to happen. There comes a point when it's not really justified. And I think it would be better, of course, if the prices didn't go up for anybody. But I also understand that's just kind of the way it goes. I mean, that's the way it has to go. And you know, people can still vote with their wallets ultimately. So I don't know. I have to say, I do believe that this is just FTC keeps grasping at straws, trying to find something that they can use as a means to, you know, make up for the failures that they've had already. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think they're going to succeed. I think they're going to have similar issues that they had before. Maybe not. I mean, I think their argument is better this time than it was before. But I also am just not really sure that their argument holds as much weight as they want it to, because of the fact that, yes, Microsoft is technically providing more. They're providing less in some avenues, but also providing more in other avenues. And I mean, I believe, I could be mistaken about this, but I believe Game Pass Ultimate also includes the online services. I'm not positive on that front. You know, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does not, because Game Pass Ultimate also includes the day one games, which of course the Game Pass standard does not. So I don't fully understand that part. I don't know all the facts on that, or at least I don't remember all the facts on that. It probably does not include online services. But yeah, I don't see this going anywhere. I think it's just going to be exactly the same problem that they've had this whole time, and there's not really anything they can do about it. That's, at least that's my opinion. You know, we'll have to wait and see what happens, what if anything happens. But really, just this feels desperate to me. This feels like the FTC is desperate to get a win here, and they're throwing anything they can at Microsoft, and they're still going to lose because, well, honestly, because they're losers. That's really what it comes down to. It's just like, you know, you brought a case in the first place where it was very clearly biased, and you just keep pushing that. And it's like, I mean, at least they're keeping the same energy from that standpoint, but the fact is they're only going after Microsoft. And it's just, you know, there's all these other companies that they, like, I don't think they ever went after Disney for all of the acquisitions that they did, and, you know, the fact that they have basically a massive monopoly in, well, maybe not a complete monopoly. They really don't have a monopoly, but they have a lot of companies. The fact that, you know, like, they've absorbed 20th Century Fox too, on top of everything else, and I don't know. I don't like it either way. I don't like either side. I don't like the fact that Microsoft is increasing prices, even though I understand it. And I don't like the FTC just constantly, desperately trying to do it. Honestly, this kind of feels like someone who's desperate to get a person to like them. Like they're asking them out, and then they're just desperately, constantly trying to find some other way to ask, or find some other way to convince the person to go out with them. I mean, that's honestly what this feels like. They're just desperately trying to do it, and they're not having any success in that matter. Maybe I'm wrong on that front. I guess. Any other thoughts on that?
No. Although I will actually say one last thing, just to answer sort of like a question you had. Console multiplayer does come with Game Pass Ultimate, so that is included there.
Okay.
So they would be getting that.
All right, so yeah, that's good to know. Either way, we'll see how this goes. All right, so we didn't talk about previously the whole thing with Apex Legends. So previously, Electronic Arts, EA, had said that starting with Season 22 of Apex Legends, which is a free-to-play game, there would be 2 $10 battle passes per season rather than one, and EA was planning to remove the ability to purchase premium battle passes using the game's in-game currency Apex coins. Now, there was a lot of backlash to this because that was something that was just really helpful in previous years for people playing this game, because they could just play the game a bunch, get enough coins, and then they could purchase the premium battle pass. So there was a ton of backlash on this, and EA has confirmed that following this outcry, this change to the battle pass is no longer going to be the case. So now, this is what EA said: "You've spoken and we've listened. With the release of Season 22, we will restore the ability to get the Premium Battle Pass for 950 Apex coins. We recognize that we could have handled the Battle Pass changes better. That's on us. You'll be able to earn enough Apex coins via the Battle Pass to get future passes." So, now I will already say, I am in no way, like, I haven't played Apex. I'm not interested in these battle royale type games at all. Like, I'm sure it's a great game, but it's just not for me. I'm not really interested in the multiplayer stuff. I like the single player better. So I'm not going to cover like all of the specific details here as far as how it has run in the past. But I will note here that with the launch of Season 22, the first Premium Battle Pass will be unlockable by completing a series of simple in-game challenges. Starting with the second split on September 17th, Premium Battle Passes will be available for 950 Apex coins. Moving forward, they said, we recognize that we need to be more timely, transparent, and consistent in our communications with you. Your priorities are our priorities. Cheaters, game stability, and quality of life updates are top of mind. We need to get better, and that's why we're acknowledging them here. As a next step, there are a number of improvements and game stability bug fixes coming in Season 22 that will be outlined in the patch notes dropping on August 5th. Thank you again for all your passion and time in Apex Legends, because we couldn't do this without you. Your thoughts?
So, I'm in a similar boat as you, as not really into all these battle royale type of games. I will say that, I mean, granted, I think most of the outcry was aimed toward just the fact they were removing the ability to purchase the battle passes with the in-game currency. Mm-hmm. I don't think that any of this was directed toward the 2 battle passes per season. Mm-hmm. So like if there was any backlash because of that, I will say this, while it probably makes things a bit more tedious, especially if you have to grind for the Apex coins, I can't completely fault EA for putting 2 out per season, partially because this is a free-to-play game, and so they're possibly doing this just to get some sort of revenue for the game. So because of them putting out 2 battle passes, in a season. I won't be too judgmental on that end. However, I do understand the outcry for them removing the ability to purchase the battle passes with the Apex coins, especially if this has been going on for the previous 21 seasons. Then I definitely understand why gamers would be upset about this. So, I definitely do understand. I do side with them on that aspect. That being said, it's good that this is being addressed and that they are they're stepping back from their original stance on this, so that's good. I definitely feel like, based on what I've heard here and there, they definitely should be addressing cheaters. That definitely sounds like something that is needed. So if they can do that, that would be great. But yeah, I don't really have too much more to say about this situation other than that.
Yeah, my understanding is that they've always had the two different battle passes, the basic one and the premium one. And I mean, like, pretty much any game with a battle pass does this as well. And I think the idea, at least always had been, that at least with Apex Legends in particular, from my understanding, you could always, by default, you get the free one. If you have, you can either pay real money or you could use the Apex coins in order to buy it. Which, of course, if you played enough of the game, you'd get enough Apex coins to where you could buy it. But most of where they made their money was microtransactions, and in some cases, people who just, maybe they couldn't play enough to where they could earn the battle coins, and so they just instead would pay for the battle pass. And people, like everyone I know who's played this game, absolutely loves it. They've loved so much of what this game has been. And like, I fully understand that. But I mean, for me, this is the same type of thing where it's like Overwatch. Looks great, looks fun, but it's not for me. And, of course, that's part of the reason why we didn't talk about this in the first place. But I do think it's a good thing just seeing this trend when people actually speak out against what these companies are doing. They will often reverse what they do. Now, that being said, I have a feeling they're going to try to change that again in the future, because I don't trust EA to not do that. Furthermore, because of what we've seen with PlayStation, and it's like, okay, the whole Helldiver situation, yes, they took away the requirement to have a PlayStation account for that game, but then they made it mandatory for single-player games. And they've confirmed, and this is in the story we're going to cover today, and mostly just because I feel like we've beaten the topic to death, but they've confirmed that they are, in fact, requiring it across the board to play God of War Ragnarok and Until Dawn, even though those are single-player only games. And like I said, we're not going to get into that because I just don't see the point. We've already made our thoughts clear on that. The TLDL of it is that neither one of us are in favor of that. I will still use it because I already have the PlayStation account that I've had for years. You will not be creating a PlayStation account, and you will not be buying these games. I was only going to buy God of War. So, but yeah. Anyway, any other thoughts on this Apex Legends topic?
No, sir.
All right. Do you want to talk about this Co-Robo game?
Sure. All right. Let me just quickly pull this up here. So, Co-Robo is a game. Well, I should probably back up a little bit here. So, there was a game on the Nintendo 3DS, and I think that was probably the only place where these games were.
GameCube was where it started.
Oh wow, GameCube. Okay, never mind then. GameCube first, and then Nintendo 3DS. A game called Chibi Robo, and it was sort of like an action adventure type of game. I didn't play the 3DS games. I was interested in playing the 3DS games, but I never got one of the copies, so I never ended up playing it. But eventually, the studio, I believe, shut down. But the developers, or at least a couple of developers from the game, they started a new game studio called Tiny Wonder Studio, and they're making their own sort of spiritual successor called Co-Robo. And I mean, guess a little fun fact here is sort of like, at least for the kanji of it, chibi being small or little, and ko being like child or also little. So, also the name is sort of a spiritual successors there as well. But the game, so they're making this game Ko-Robo, which is spiritual successor. It's, I believe, actually already started coming out on Kickstarter for the game. So essentially, you're going to be playing as the little robot, which is a boy named Tom. His father gave it to him, and well, actually, let me find the full plot summary here. So sometimes it takes the smallest hero to fulfill the greatest destiny. Somewhere in the borough of Brooklyn, which is sort of like Brooklyn, nestled within the urban jungle of New York City, Tom and his mother are celebrating his 10th birthday when a wrapped present arrives from his estranged father. Tom rips through it, excited to see what's inside. What he finds is not the coolest and latest in tiny household robo-tech, but some knockoff model, Ko-Robo. But before long, Ko-Robo is cleaning the house, helping Tom with his homework, and even playing games and reading comics with him like a brother. What will Ko-Robo's arrival have in store for Tom and his family, and perhaps the world? So it's a nice little platformer adventure type of game. Go around the house, solve some puzzles here and there, and interact with the environment, but also, you have a limited battery, so you will need to recharge it here and there. So, like, it's a simple enough game, but it seemed very interesting enough to me that I was very interested in this type of game. And just like, again, since I was interested in playing the Chibi Robo games, but I never got around to buying a copy. If this is very similar to those games, then it will definitely sort of like meet that itch that I didn't get to experience the first time around. So I am interested in that. That being said, I am not certain if I will back it on Kickstarter, or at least when I will, because like there should be plenty of time for the Kickstarter project. So maybe near the end, I might, especially, I mean, granted, I feel like this game probably will meet its goal within the first week, if not by that point. But I feel like it will meet that goal. So if it does seem like it's struggling near the end of the term, I might, just like step back and not back it. But even if I don't back it, I probably still might just end up buying it when it does come out later on, though. But yeah, it definitely does seem like an interesting game to me.
Yeah, well, I too have never played any of the Chibi Robo games. I was interested in them back in the GameCube days, at least sometime after they came out. And I know, like, my younger sister played it, and that's probably one of the last games she played, because she stopped playing video games at a certain point, and then just, I don't think she's ever gone back to them. But I did get the 3DS one, like, for $15 or something. It's still sealed. I haven't opened it up yet. I've heard the 3DS one wasn't very good, but half the time people say a game's not very good, and then I end up loving it. So it's one of those that I'll probably eventually check out. But yeah, I mean, like, I think it's cool that they're doing this. I definitely would like to give some of these games a chance. I probably would try out the 3DS one first, just because of the fact that I already have it. But if anything, I would, assuming that they don't like re-release the old games like in a collection or something, I would probably just emulate the GameCube ones, try them out on Steam Deck or something, if I was wanting to play them. But right now I'm just kind of like, I'm not in any rush. This Ko-Robo game looks like it could be pretty cool. I'm not going to be backing the Kickstarter, but when it comes out, I'll probably check it out at some point, like when it's on a decent sale and all that, because I think that it could be really, really good game. Like, it probably would be something I would like, but I have like 300 games or something on Steam alone, and that's not even counting all the games I have on 3DS and Switch and Vita, and I don't really need another game. So, but yeah, still looks pretty cool. Any other thoughts on that?
No. Although now I am interested in checking out the GameCube version and seeing what that was like, though.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right. So let's see. Let me find the right article here. Okay, so we recently got news. I mean, initially the thought was that the Humble Studio, uh, Humble, let's see. Let me double check this. Humble Games. The original reporting was that the studio itself closed down because 36 employees were laid off. We just got an update yesterday that they are actually undergoing restructuring rather than fully shutting down. And the restructuring has involved much deliberation and careful thought with the goal of ensuring the stability and support of our developers and ongoing projects. We are acutely aware of the profound impact this decision has on our team members at Humble Games and deeply empathize with everyone affected. Our team's contributions have been world-class and invaluable, supporting the launch of our game since we started publishing in 2017. They said ongoing and future projects are said to be unaffected, and the restructure has no impact on Humble Bundle's operations. It affirmed that it was committed to making this transition as smooth as possible for everyone involved. Now, I do just want to note one quick thing before I let you take over here, and that is the fact that this is a studio owned by IGN, because IGN bought out Humble Bundle, or well, the Humble branch of everything, which includes Humble Bundle as well as Humble Games. And so this is, as much as IGN has had negative things to say about specifically the Microsoft layoffs, and never mind the PlayStation ones, those are no big deal. Here they are laying a bunch of people off, shutting down a studio, and it looks like even some of the games that they've been putting out actually look pretty fantastic recently. There's one that actually just came out, I believe, last week. I can't remember the name of it. It's obviously very heavily inspired by Hollow Knight, and it's like, I really can't remember the name of it, but either way. Anyway, your thoughts?
Is the game you're referring to called Bow?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. There's definitely quite a lot to unpack here. Like, the first thing I was gonna say is the fact that they call this a restructuring, but they laid off the entire staff, like all the 36 people. That was the entire staff. So like, what do you restructure from? How do you restructure from laying off everyone? Like, and what are you changing it to? Like,
just two people. You just need two people to do it.
Like,
one guy can do this.
It's just amazing. Like, I don't know what they were thinking there, and the fact that how they handled this too was ridiculous. Like, they didn't tell anyone. People just found out that very day that they were being let go, which is wow. And also the devs that worked with them, like the developers behind Bow, they didn't even know this was happening. And they also found out at the same time. And some people were very concerned about games they published through Humble Games, where like, well, what's going to happen to the games now? Especially since some of them, which is sort of a similar situation for what happened with WB Games with the Adult Swim titles, where they might not be able to assume responsibility of distributing the games on multiple platforms. Some, actually, I do want to say that WB Games did come back eventually and allow most of the devs to assume responsibility for handling distribution of their games, so they weren't completely removed from platforms as initially was reported. But a couple of developers, they did not have the finances or the means to distribute their games. So when those games were gone, they were gone for good, unless they can find a way to manage distributing them again, this could be another case for some of these titles with Humble Games. Now, I know some developers might be able to do it, like A Hat in Time. That was originally published through Humble Games, but they actually now are the developers are now publishing the games themselves. And I think also the game for I can't remember what the other game was, but there was another game that that was published through Humble Games, and the developers decided to self-publish themselves. So if developers can do that, then that's good. But some might not be able to do that, which is going to be a problem. And it's bad for the developers because the games they made, they can't sell anymore because they don't have a publisher. And also for the gamers because these games will not be able to be purchased anymore because once they're gone, they're gone. And it's really sad in that sense as well. But just like how IGN handled the situation is ridiculous. And like you said, for all that they want to do on their publishing side, talking about how things are unfair in the gaming industry and how there are so many problems, you should look in the mirror, and because there's a lot going on right there that should be addressed. But I doubt IGN's gonna be publishing a lot of articles about that, though. But it definitely does suck for the team because you things are going about as normal. You expect things are you're going to work and you're gonna do your job and whatnot, and then next thing you know, you show up to work, and then you're unemployed.
Yeah.
So it definitely sucks there, but I honestly don't know. I don't know what to expect there because again, what are you restructuring to? Where are you trying to transition toward? Because there's nothing that you have if you get rid of everyone. That means you're just going to be hiring a new team, which is why are you hiring a new team when you already had people to begin with? Or are
outsourcing or AI?
Yep. Funny that you should mention that because someone actually saw somewhere saying that like the response for this, I think they ran it through some sort of generator or something like that, and they said like it was pretty much like, was this made by AI? And then they said like there was a good percentage that this was written by AI just because of the wording and the phrasing that was used. So, but yeah, this is just like, wow.
Yep. Yeah, okay. I mean, like I've made it no secret that I despise IGN. I used to really like them. I used to really respect them, and then they started getting into making their video game podcasts. I mean, they start talking about politics in video game podcasts, and it's like, I don't want to hear about your politics. Like, even if I agreed with you, which I don't want to hear about your politics. I don't care. Like, I want you to talk about Nintendo games. Nintendo voice chat is not a place to talk about the Orange Man bad or, whatever else. I don't care. I don't care what you, even if you agreed with me, it's like, it's a video game podcast. Talk about video games. Don't bring your real world politics or any of this other stuff in there. It's not important. What I want to hear you talk about is video games. That's what we're here for. That's why we're listening. You go off into left field. And then, of course, obviously there's been a whole lot of other stuff, articles and stuff where they are getting into their politics and, racisms and all this other stuff. And it's just like, I completely lost all respect for them. And I do everything I can to actively avoid their site. I will go to the most obscure site I can. And granted, they're not the only one I avoid. There's other ones like Kotaku and Polygon that I try to avoid as well. But I do my best to completely stay away from IGN if I can. There are rare situations where it's really the only option. But I think I've been to their site maybe like twice in the past several years. Because I don't want to give them any traffic. I'm not going to watch their videos. None of that stuff. And especially all the virtue signaling. It just drives me crazy. Especially because most of the time, their virtue signaling, they end up doing exactly the thing that they're condemning other people for doing. And it's like, like, none of us are perfect. I know that. I fully understand that as a Christian. I am as far from perfect as you can possibly get. But when you are constantly virtue signaling about about all this stuff, I mean, like, they're posturing about the problems with Microsoft. I mean, the layoffs with Microsoft, and of course the fact that they are mad at Microsoft for doing these things, and then they say nothing when Sony does it, nothing when they do it. They don't say a single thing about it, or if they do, they just kind of like try to brush it under the rug. It's like, stop posturing about these things. You're not being actual journalists. You're being activists, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't care anymore. And so yeah, I don't like them. Obviously, that's all I'm really trying to say from that standpoint. But really, like, it always sucks that all these things are happening, and like I don't think necessarily. I don't think I would be bothered by it nearly as much if they hadn't been, all this posturing about how horrible it is that Microsoft is doing this, or, that anyone is doing it, and then they do it themselves. We have to look at these things realistically. Yes, it sucks that people are losing their jobs. It sucks that these studios are getting shut down. And especially right now, with the economy being even worse, it's like it sucks that much more because they have to find new jobs, and some people are they're going to be unable to pay bills, and there's just all sorts of problems. And it's like, I really want these people to be able to find new jobs, especially people who are actually like developing good games, and now they're without work. I mean, I hope that they can land on their feet and hopefully find some really good things to do, because like I've heard good things about this Bow game. I can't remember the full title of it. It's like I saw it and I'm like, I want to play that game. That looks great. But even though it is something that's going to happen regardless, it bothers me that much more when it comes from people who are posturing about how bad, certain people are that do it, and then they just ignore, when they do it themselves. They won't even be like, we're sorry that we did this. We're sorry that I mean, it'd be one thing if I guess the big thing is I just want them to say, we're sorry for the posturing about these other studios doing it, and then we just go ahead and do it ourselves as well. Instead, they could just, if they were balanced across the board and maybe not necessarily condemning everyone, but just recognizing, hey, this is the reality we're in right now because the economy's in bad shape. Of course, obviously, the fact that so much of so much of the there was a lot of over hiring done during the pandemic because of this, where video games were at that time, and now it's just catching up at this point. Getting rid of all these extra positions because of how things balanced out, and then on top of the fact, the costs have gone up significantly all across the board, which means they can afford it even less than they could before. But I don't know. I want to make it clear. I don't want anyone to lose their job. Well, that's not true. I don't want anyone to lose their job unless it's deserved. And there are situations where it's absolutely deserved, when people just aren't doing their work and everything else. But it's a whole different story between that and just, situations like this. And I'm not saying that IGN is like the worst in the world because they let these people go, because they shut down the studio. I mean, it sucks. I just think they're the worst because of every other reason. And this only just adds to it, in my opinion, I guess. But I've ranted a lot about that. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. So we do actually have a much more positive, very based take from the developers of Astrobot for the PlayStation 5. Well, they've developed all the Astrobot games, including the VR stuff, and I think one of them was on PS4. I could be remembering incorrectly on that. But let's just read here. So the Astrobot director recently did an interview, and in this interview, excuse me. So the developer is Team Asobi. The director for Team Asobi said that let me back up. He was asked about what's most important when it comes to making these games, and he said, "I think every game." Sorry, let me back up on this. Okay, I'll just read directly. This is off of DualShockers, which is, of course, PlayStation fan site. Speaking with CG Magazine about Astrobots, Team Asobi's director Nicholas Doucette opened up about what was the most important mechanic for their upcoming game. While graphics and resolution are naturally a key feature to include with any video game, for Doucette and the team, making sure frame losses were kept to a minimum. And that is not a complete sentence. So, let me correct your sentence, DualShockers. While graphics and resolution are naturally a key feature to include in any video games, for Doucette and the team, making sure frame losses were kept to a minimum is their highest priority. Or it is making sure frame losses were kept to a minimum. Any of those would be a complete sentence. What you have was not a complete sentence. Do better. In response to the question about whether the studio ever had to pull back on the visuals because they were hampering the overall fluidity of the experience, Doucette answered with what was an absolute must for Astrobots development. Doucette says, "I think every game experiences that, and at some point you will lose frames regardless of what you do. For us, maintaining 60 frames per second in Astrobot is an absolute must. The game should never drop below 60. This is more important than resolution, graphics, or anything else." It's a beautiful thing. I'm going to let you take over before I get into my stuff.
Absolutely based and red-pilled. You know what? Just put him in that Giga Chad meme formats. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what else to say. Like he said it all. Essentially he basically just said frames win games. Which, hey, I mean, that's something that you rarely hear from any game, any directors. Like you hear them say like, yeah, well, we had to make sacrifices to make the game look as great as it can. Like we've heard this like for multiple games. Especially big AAA games, but you don't hear anyone saying, we need to hit 60 frames per second. Like, this is our baseline, this is our standard. So to have someone come out and say it is great. Also, the fact that this is coming out for a Sony game, okay, because, Sony fanboys always like to say, well, the game looks great, even if it's not hitting 60 FPS, it looks phenomenal. I'd rather play it at cinematic 24 FPS and getting that 4K with the ultra high definition ray tracing, that we can see the pupils of a frog that is in the background like 70 feet away. I'd rather have that over 60 FPS. And this director's come out saying, no, let's get rid of that. 60 FPS all the way. So this is phenomenal, and I really wish that this mentality applied to many other games because, sure, you will likely have to have some sort of sacrifice, but I feel like out of any sacrifice to make, having an enjoyable and stable performance trumps everything else. Whether it's we're going to have the game running at 4K. Okay, maybe we can't get at 4K. Maybe we have to dial it back to, say, 1440p. But if we can get to around 60 FPS, that's good enough. I mean, and maybe we can't have the most high resolution textures. Maybe our textures can't be as great as we want them to be. But if we can get 60 FPS and have it look good, that's good enough. I wish we had more of that mentality in the industry. And in a sense, I mean, I feel like maybe also having the games sacrificing those graphics and those features. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't worked in game development before, but maybe I would argue that if you don't target that highest resolution, that highest graphic fidelity possible, maybe that could also save you some costs and your budget won't be as big. I could be wrong, but if it saves you money in that aspect, when you like to save some money, maybe also would be in a better position so you wouldn't actually also lay off people because you're not spending as much money. And also, you wouldn't feel incentivized to raise the prices of games or do any sort of monetization because you know that meeting your threshold target to, make a profit would be lower because you're not spending as much money to make these games. So maybe that's another reason why you shouldn't be reaching for the stars in that aspect. But hey, what do I know? Again, I don't develop games, but I do love what he said here though. That was great. That was phenomenal, and you love to see it.
Indeed. It's something that should happen with way more games, and as we've stated many times before, firmly believe that the focus on realism in games, on visuals over performance, is what is the most detrimental thing to game development. It is, without question, it is the biggest problem in gaming right now, and if they would just focus on actually making the games run well and play well and not be so focused on how realistic they look, games would cost less and we would actually get better performance across the board instead of 30 FPS still being the standard. It should not be the standard. It should have died a long time ago. And if they can't hit 60, they should at least do 40 because 40 feels a lot better than 30. And it is what it is. Like, I'm more willing to forgive Nintendo for doing it because of the fact that the Switch is so underpowered than I am for Xbox and PlayStation to do it, because their hardware is powerful enough to do 60 frames. And yeah, most of their games are not doing 4K. They're upscaling to 4K, but they're not rendering at 4K. And I am very glad to see Astrobot, which looks like a fantastic game anyway. It's like, when this one comes to PC, I will probably get it. I am very interested. I think it looks great. It will probably be a lot of fun. Looks like in terms of the amount of time it's going to be, they say it's probably going to be around 12 to 15 hours, which is a good amount of time as long as I'm not spending $70 on that. But, 12 to 15 hours, I'd be willing to maybe go as high as 50, probably less than that. I'd probably rather spend less. But, more developers need to do this. And I stand with my brother, Chris McCracken from Married to the Games, who had great high praise for this, and I fully endorse this man, Mr. Doucette, for making this statement. But you can definitely tell those sweet baby's not involved in this one.
No,
at least from the looks of it. Unless they decide to kill off Astrobot halfway through and replace him with a woman and with a female robot who's perfectly able to do everything and defeats every boss with one hit. Give me a movie mode. All right. Any other thoughts on that?
No. I mean, actually, one thing I'll also add is the fact that I feel like this is another thing that developers could do is to go for stylized graphics. I mean, I think that Astrobot with that style works, and that also helps in the fact that because it's going for its own particular unique look, it's not trying to go for complete realism. Although granted, certain aspects of the game do look very nice, especially some of the reflections and lighting I think looks great, but because of the fact that it's not going for ultra realism, that is going for a somewhat cartoonish look, it also aids in the fact that it's going to age a whole lot better than games that do try to go for realism. Because if you look at a game that came on the PS3 that was going for realism, like say the original Uncharted, it's aging a whole lot worse than a game that would have been going for a more simplistic or its own unique art style instead. So if you do something like Astrobot, it'll age a whole lot better in the Fidelity. You won't need to make a remake or a remaster necessarily because of the fact that it aged not well. Let me put it like that.
But they will. You know they will.
Oh, yes.
All right.
So, there is a rumor / leak that RDNA 4 features for AMD are coming out. But the thing is, they're supposedly coming out first for the PS5 Pro, which is coming out also a rumor later this year, possibly September. So here's an article from Tom's Hardware. There's a lot of stuff going over the aspects of RDNA 4, and especially one thing in key features talking about like the ray tracing features as well. So it says double ray tracing intersect engine, 64 bytes ray trace node, and then goes over some other stuff. And it talks about RDNA 3 graphics on the current AMD cards, which also I believe the PS5 and Xbox Series X used, and also I think the Series S as well. But there was a partially redacted datasheet highlighting the expected ray tracing features coming to RDNA 4 GPUs, and also design coming to the hybrid RDNA 3 plus RDNA 4 ray trace design coming to PS5 Pro when it launches presumably later this year or early next year. The leaked data points seem to confirm that advanced ray tracing technology is going to be a major focus in RDNA 4. And then there was also an image here with that leak with that sheet as well. So before I say much more on this, did you have any thoughts on this rumor?
Well, to be honest, like I'm sure it's true. Like I don't have any real reason to doubt the legitimacy of it. The part that I'm not entirely sure about is the stuff about it being in the PS5 Pro, because as of this point, we still don't even know if the PS5 Pro is an actual thing. I mean, we assume it is, but so much without being absolutely positive. The main issue I have with the idea of it being in the PS5 Pro, it's mostly just that there's so much of this fanboy speculation in particular that, the PS5 Pro is going to be super powerful, all this other stuff. It's going to completely blow away the competition of PCs and of course Xbox. And the other part of this that I'm not entirely sure about is that like the PS5 and the Series X, I'm pretty sure don't even have actual GPUs. I mean, they have like integrated graphics, if I'm not mistaken. And so now that's not to say that they don't have a decent amount of power for integrated graphics, because they do. But that's the part that I'm a little confused, or a little skeptical about, is whether or not, because it's making it sound almost like they're expecting there to actually be a new GPU in, obviously the PS5 Pro, assuming it's a real thing, will be more powerful than the PS5. I mean, that's a given. That's why it would be called a Pro. But having an actual like a new generation of GPUs, that's the part that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially given the cost there would be to put that in there. And the fact that they haven't used actual GPUs in their consoles, it's just integrated graphics. So now the part about there being this advanced or double ray tracing technology, like I believe that absolutely will be something that they try to pull off in the PS5 Pro, because that's all they care about. They care so much about doing their ray tracing, and they don't give a crap about what it does to the performance. And ultimately what they have to do with the visuals in order to get this partial ray tracing, and they'll call it double ray tracing, but it'll still be like a tenth of the ray tracing that you get on PC with a default ray tracing. Because it's double what the PS5 can do, but it's not double what you get from a default, from like from an NVIDIA, from the 20 series and onward, where they started implementing ray tracing. And either way, I think ray tracing is completely pointless. It's like, oh yes, it looks pretty, but that otherwise it's just worthless. All it does is tank the performance of your games. It is garbage as far as I'm concerned. It should not exist for anything other than like the strongest GPUs that can really do it. Because like I've even tried ray tracing in a few games. It always tanks the performance every single game, and then they try forcing it into these PS5 games, making it a default thing. And if you compare, like the PS5 ray tracing compared to the PC ray tracing, it's laughable how much worse it is. But once again, it's not a necessary feature. It is a waste of resources. You could get a lot more FPS by just leaving out ray tracing altogether. And I know I've gone kind of off on a tangent here, kind of. But the reality is that while I do think that more likely than not, these things are in fact going into the PS5 in some form, especially because that's so heavily been their focus, is the visual aspect of everything. I still think that ray tracing is a waste of resources. It is a stupid feature that should not be emphasized until they can really get performance locked down properly. And I don't know, I'm just ranting, so I'm going to let you take over now. I'm done.
Yeah, I also agree that this definitely seems like it is a real thing. I partially feel like some aspects could be in the PS5. Like, one thing I will say is that while it does seem a bit weird that having a full GPU in a console is unusual, because it's always been some sort of AP or integrated graphics.
Right. Yeah.
For some crazy reason, I will say is that the iGPUs, I don't know why, but they're always better on console. Like, I don't know why desktops never get anything on par to console integrated graphics, which is weird. I feel like for budget builds, people would love to have that in there.
Right.
Because I know that with the current Ryzen chips, they are using RDNA 3, which is the current GPU architecture, but it's a very nerfed version of RDNA 3, where it's like you wouldn't be getting anything extra. You really couldn't use it for gaming, even though you have the same architecture that is used in like a 7800 XT card and also in a PS5. Yeah. So I feel like they could be probably bringing actual RDNA 4 into there, but it probably won't be on the same par as like an actual actual physical GPU that you would get on a PC. I feel like the technology will be in there, but at the same time, similar to what you said, how's that going to look for the consumer? Because having a brand new piece of technology in a console, that's gonna be pricey. And even though Sony is likely to swallow in some of the cost and shift that to the games and shift that to PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Network and stuff like that, I doubt they're going to be selling such a device for less than $550, which is I believe the current price of the PS5 or the Slim version. Because
I don't think it's $550. I don't think it's that much.
Oh, okay.
I think it's less than that, but I don't remember.
Okay. But either way, I don't see this being anything. I don't see it being less than 500.
Yeah.
Maybe 550. They might try to push things and maybe edge it toward $600.
Yeah,
I doubt they will, but like they definitely would not try to sell this for too much of a loss. Just because if it really is using RDNA 4, that's going to be expensive because this is new technology. It's, I mean, granted, when they put out the PS5 with an SSD in there, like that was. Well, then again, SSDs were NVMe SSDs were already out on the market, so I can't really say. I mean, granted, I feel like the PS5 actually did help to bring the price down because there was more demand for them, and because of that,
and they helped to improve the technology too.
That is also
the one that they put in the PS5 initially was better than what we had in the PC. I mean, now it's not anymore, but it was at the time.
Yeah, but so like, I feel like that also played a part into the price of the PS5, but like with something like this, where it's just like a brand new GPU architecture, that's not something you can necessarily like bring down in price, because unlike an SSD where anyone can make it, and especially, I mean, granted not with Xboxes because that's proprietary, but with that SSD, that's something where people can multiple manufacturers are working on it, and they can lower the price and compete and whatnot. With that GPU, assuming that again they're using RDNA 4, you can't really compete with that, so the price isn't going to necessarily drop. And in fact, I mean, in some places around the world, actually, or at least with the Xbox, I know that the price has actually gone up for the console. It hasn't even, and so like, it's gonna be expensive. So Sony fans might like the fact that they're getting better ray tracing, but it's going to come at a price, and are they really going to be willing to pay that in the future? But who knows? And again, we still don't know when it's coming out. I'm still definitely in the camp of PS5 Pro is coming out. When we'll hear about it, when it's actually going to come out, is going to be another thing altogether. But I am interested in seeing what would happen, and if, assuming, of course, this is true, it is also unusual that a brand new piece of GPU architecture is coming out first on a console and not on an actual PC. That is the unusual thing, which I am not entirely certain I would find believable, because I feel like AMD would definitely want to showcase this on stage somewhere, and not just like, hey, this is coming to a console, and later PC. That just seems odd to me, but we'll see what happens.
Right. One thing I did just think about is that it could be something that's in between. So basically, RDNA 4 would be coming to the PS5 Pro, but not with one of these new GPUs. What it would be is basically it's just a feature that they're adding to whatever custom APU whatever it is that they're putting in the PS5 Pro, which, because I would assume it's not going to be an actual GPU. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's any way they're going to lower their costs enough to where they could afford to do that. It has to be something custom. And so I do think that, yes, this probably would come to the PS5 Pro, and of course it'll obviously be flaunted by people because they think that graphics matter more than performance because they're stupid. Well, maybe that's a little too harsh. Not because they're stupid, but because, well, I don't know what word to use, but I wouldn't say stupid, because stupid implies lack of intelligence, and that's not the problem. It's just they're just willing to accept the lower frame rate in exchange for prettier graphics, and that's how it is. I refer back to Nicholas Doucette of Team Asobi and what he said. What's more important? So yeah, we'll see what happens with this. I think that more likely than not, what I could see happening anyway is that AMD will reveal their new line of graphics cards, which will include this, and then they'll also say, and this will also be in the custom iGPU, APU, whatever, for the PS5 Pro. But this feature will be there as well. And I mean, considering the fact that they've been able to get FSR 3 on just about any piece of hardware, I think that they could potentially find ways to make it work with other pieces of hardware. And considering just what they've done with the PS5 in general and implementing ray tracing, even if it is a nerfed version, I don't see this as impossible. I just don't think ray tracing is worth anything. I think it's a waste of resources, and I'm not going to get back into that rant. So, any other thoughts on this topic?
No, sir.
All right. Well, we are getting to the end of our show here, so let's do our recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right. So my recommendation is, oh yeah, that's what it was. So a while ago, I mentioned about backing up files to multiple pieces or multiple hard drives or something like that, just to make sure you have plenty of backups for all your files and information and whatnot. I'm going to do some add-ons onto that, and that is to label your hard drives, label your if you have a good number of them, flash drives as well, because something that I came across recently is the fact that I did not know what was what for what I had, and so when I was trying to find my boot drive for reinstalling my OS, I had to go through multiple flash drives before I could find the one that was correct. And a problem was also the fact that a lot of them were using pretty much similar models, so they looked the same.
Yeah.
And even though this and that, it was hard to know which one was that. So I had to test each one before I could find it. And similarly, I also was trying to make backups of different stuff, so I didn't know what was what. One hard drive, because they were all the same model, or at least the same build, even though some of them just had different capacity sizes. Some of them were just like archives of old videos that I had made. Other ones were just basic backups. Some of them had my GOG games. So like, and the fact of also is that how I had them set up was that a few were also encrypted, so I had to decrypt them before I knew what was on them. So make things easier in your life and just get a little label, one of those little sticky, peely labels. Mark it, put it on there, and that way you'll know in the future, this is what's on this drive, this is what's on this flash drive, and you'll save yourself confusion. If you have like fewer than say, well, I mean, if you have 2 flash drives or 2 hard drives, you won't really need to do that. But if you have like more than say 3, maybe 5, then definitely label them and keep things simple.
All right. Always good. Most of my stuff is all like, I don't have multiple of the same thing, so for me it's easy enough. Like, my PC, I have 3 different hard drives. One is a 4 terabyte HDD. One is a 1 terabyte SSD that's just one of the regular SSDs, not the NVMe, and then a 4 terabyte NVMe. So from that standpoint, it's easy. Flash drives, I have multiple flash drives, most of which are fairly low capacity, because some of them I've had since college, a really long time ago. But they're all distinct enough to where it's like easy enough for me to be able to not have to do all that. But yeah, anyway, my recommendation is going to be specifically Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which of course I couldn't recommend last week because I hadn't played it yet, but also Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, as that has been fantastic so far, and Ni no Kuni 2. I'm doing a three for this week because I just I cannot talk tonight. 3 great games I have been playing over the past week that are all worth checking out. And the nice thing is, of course, Ni no Kuni 2, you don't have to play the first game in order to play the second game. And even though I'm going to play the first game before I really dive into the second game was definitely easier to start because of the fact that it has that action gameplay and because you get into the action very quickly. So that's what I got for recommendations.
Phenomenal choices.
All right, dissuasions.
My dissuasion is, as of right now, do not buy any 13th, 14th, or 14th gen Intel CPUs. Currently, there's been some problems with the CPUs getting too much voltage, and that is also going to cause problems down the road. It's probably because of stability issues, because the performance is not stable, but also over time, this could also lead to potential hardware defects. So Intel, after public pressure through media, has come out with a statement saying that they found what the issue is, and they're going to try to release a microcode patch in the future, and they expect to be out by late August. So definitely update your BIOS after that period if you currently are using one. But if you currently are trying to upgrade your CPU, or if you currently are just going to like buy a pre-build, wait. If you want to get an Intel current gen CPU, wait until after that point, just to make sure that everything is fine there, so that way you don't go in with any potential issues.
Very good to know. I still have a 9th gen Intel CPU, so I've been good with that all these years. All right. Well, my dissuasion is going to be, don't play Dracula X, because it's garbage. The only thing good about it, well, okay, there's two good things about it. One is that it looks nice. It has nice graphics, nice pixel art, and it has good music. But everything else about it, no, it's not. No, thank you. I know that it's supposed to be like a reimagining of Rondo Blood. I wonder if Rondo Blood is any better, or is it just as bad? Do you know?
That I don't know. I don't think I've played either of them, so I can't really judge.
I have Rondo Blood on the Vita, so I might check that out at some point, find out if it's any good. But I mean, not right now, obviously, since I'm playing other stuff. But maybe next time I go back to Vita, I'll just try booting it up and see if it's any good. And if it's not, well, oh well. But anyway. All right. So, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Zeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamZeracon. The last video I put out was just talking about. Actually, I can't remember what it was. It was talking about Linux. That's what I do remember. Now I remember. It was the fact that NVIDIA is opening up their kernel modules for open source. So that way, that means that it should be easier to have better drivers for NVIDIA GPUs on Linux, because before you're either running proprietary ones or you're running the open source ones that were available that weren't really all that great. But now you have the current ones, which possibly also allow for CUDA. So maybe you can get DLSS on Linux, and maybe even possibly ray tracing through NVIDIA on Linux as well. So that would be great for people look in that regards. If things go well with my schedule, I will be putting out a video sometime over this weekend discussing what I've been hearing, which I haven't heard about in a while. People saying that Batman is a very oppressive person because he attacks the poor and the mentally ill. So that will be a topic that I will go over. Yeah.
So you can find me on YouTube at the Frozen Gamer 87. That's my main gaming channel. There, I just put out a comparison for the Steam Deck OLED and the Switch OLED for Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, which the Switch version is just a port of the PS3 version. The Steam version is the remaster that came out later for PC, PS4, Xbox One, I believe. Xbox? It might actually only be PS4, and Xbox One. PS4 and PC. I don't know. I haven't actually looked that much into it. But anyway, so yeah, that's a pretty interesting comparison. Apart from frame rate being the obvious difference, and some slight differences in the visuals, particularly in terms of the brightness. But that seems to be more a remaster thing versus the Switch being weaker hardware, because the Switch is stronger than the PS3, so visually it's pretty much identical to the PS3 version. Anyway, so I just put that one out. I also, this past Friday, put out my interview for my Dad's in Gaming interview with Timothy Hall, who was one of the 3 founders of Married to the Games podcast. So there's that. And then this next week, I'm going to have my comparison for Ni no Kuni 2 going up as well. And then that Friday should be the next Dad's in Gaming interview, which is with a gentleman by the name of Victor Herrera, also known as Beer Money Vic, and his avatar is Prison Mike from The Office, which is perfect. And I'll probably actually use that avatar as the cover art for his thing, because it's like that's how before I met him in person, before I talked to him, he always had that avatar, and it's just like I always associated him with Prison Mike. Oh, Prison Mike. But anyway, then I also have a cooking channel, and that is Not Authentic But Delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABD cooking. This past week I put out a recipe, or rather today, as that is Wednesday, the 24th of July, I put out my meatball supreme pizza recipe, and probably going forward I'm going to have my recipes come out on Wednesdays, just because the amount of time it takes to get the comparisons edited, it takes up so much time that I just don't have the time to edit the other video. Even though the video doesn't technically take, the cooking video doesn't take very long to edit, the problem is that I'm typically spending like 8 or 9 hours just editing the comparison video because of all the different bits and pieces with that. And so I just don't have the time to edit both and get them both out in time for Monday. So I'm switching that up. Probably going to be Wednesdays going forward for those. But next week it's going to be the video that's going up Wednesday of next week, which is the 31st of July, will be for pickled jalapenos. And it actually demonstrates also, although I don't actually make it on screen because the jalapenos are the main focus. I made some like Uber nachos with it, with some homemade nacho cheese sauce and homemade beans, homemade taco meat, and then of course the pickled jalapenos that were homemade. You know, and just like it was delicious. It was so good. Oh man, it was fantastic. And but the jalapenos are the main focus, even though of course they're just, I want to demonstrate them best by putting them on nachos, because that's where they belong, even though I could eat them plain too. Anyway, so there's that. Of course, you can also find Not Authentic But Delicious on Facebook and on Twitter, or X, although in either situation you're not really getting anything on those other than just me reposting the recipes. Then you can also find our podcast. If you are listening to the audio only version, we also have a video version that goes up on YouTube every Friday. So the audio version goes up at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday. The video version, which includes not just a look at our mugs, but also gameplay clips from all the things we've been playing lately, as well as occasionally game trailers, that sort of thing when we are discussing current news, especially stuff that's just been revealed, whether it's through a PlayStation showcase or a Nintendo Direct or an Xbox showcase or Game Awards or any other sort of thing. So if you want to watch that video version, that's Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, and that goes up as well. And of course, also Orange Box Podcast, you can contact us if you have any comments, questions, insults, roasting, whatever. You can just you can either contact us through by commenting on the video version of the podcast. You can contact us through Twitter or X at the Orange Box Pod. You can send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, we welcome any feedback you have, one way or the other, positive or negative. And of course, if we get absolutely nothing, we'll just keep talking for 2.5 hours every week. Well, it's probably not usually going to be 2.5 hours, but this week it is. So, but we'll typically talk for 2 hours because this is basically how we catch up each week and get a chance to talk about the video games we've been playing. I know I always hold in all of my talk about where I am with games I'm playing because I want to talk about it on the podcast. So anyway, that is everything I have, I believe. So do you have any final thoughts before we close for the night?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, fight, 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 like you just fell out of a coconut tree, like you are what can be, unburdened by what has been. Orange Box Podcast, out.